Good evening, everybody, and welcome to episode 20 of WrestleZone Unfiltered. We were going to do this last week and had a little issue, and we are going to do it with Friday night last week just to get back on rhythm.
and we
And
had it,
I
and we
didn't have
had a
any
little
power.
issue.
We're all having issues last week. And normally I'm a little bit more excited for this, but this has been a very somber last couple of days for especially my generation. We got Ozzy Osbourne yesterday, and then in the wrestling world, Hulk Hogan. No matter what your opinions on him are, we're going to go through a lot of those here in just a minute. And I'm going to introduce everybody here in just a second, but I'm going to start this off with a tweet that came out from Vince McMahon that says, and I quote, "The world lost a treasure today. Hulk Hogan was the greatest WWE superstar of all time," all in caps. "Someone who was loved and admired around the world. He was a trailblazer, the first performer who transitioned from being a wrestling star into a global phenomenon. His grit and unbridled thirst for success were unparalleled and made him the consummate performer. He gave everything he had to the audience, whom he appreciated, respected, and loved. He leaves us with one of his favorite expressions: train, take your vitamins, and say your prayers. Today, we pray for him." That was from Vince McMahon. And introducing the roundtable here tonight, our resident diva, Miss Danny, back with us. And then we got the greatest Canadian wrestler of all time, Sprue Bret Hart.
Don't say that. You're going to get me in trouble with the locals.
Actually,
Paul is back with us tonight, looking a little different. And joining us for the first time is Otis's older brother. It would be Steve DJ Meaty Linkus. Maybe next time you can throw the meaty in there. It's all good, man.
The
Nice
lens
to see
isn't
everybody.
big enough. The lens isn't big enough for me to do the caterpillar, so don't ask.
Well, you got to figure it out by next week. We'll get you one with wider lens. So, Danny, we'll start with you. What did you think when you heard the news today?
so this is actually what I was doing. So I kind of tell you. So I'm sitting here, boop-a-doop-a-doo, on a Zoom training, and my camera was off. Thank God. My sister texts me, and I'm like, "Wait, the what?" And I'm like, "Oh my God!" I'm like, "Okay." I thought it was like I was seeing things. Like I was just okay. Wait, Hulk Hogan, what? So then I hurriedly got off the training, quickly answered the questions, ended the training, confirmed on Yahoo, and sure enough, he was gone. I was floored. My sister called me to express her condolences.
Yeah, the way I found out, one of my kids, he does. I think we've talked about him before. He does the anime and a lot of conventions. He actually represents a lot of the former Power Rangers and stuff. So he's met a lot of them at the Comic Cons and stuff. He's the one that actually called me, and I was right in the middle of a meeting myself because I work from home, and I just had finished up a Zoom call. Funny enough, and I answered the phone. I said, "Everything okay?" Because he knows I work during the day. He's like, "You hear about Hulk Hogan?" I'm like, "No." He's like, "He died." I'm like, "Oh, okay." And it just kind of, I don't know. I was just kind of stunned and numb. Paul, what did you think when you heard the news?
Well, at first I thought it was a joke.
Mm-hmm.
Like you see it pop up and you're like, oh, maybe I should look. People's humor can be weird sometimes,
You don't know my sister.
so I had to go. Okay, check Reddit, go to Discord, talk to the people. Okay, no, come back. Let's make sure, confirm. Okay, and what sealed the deal was apparently there was a post on Reddit an hour or two before the news came out that said basically, I live down the road from Hulk Hogan and I just saw a bunch of ambulances leave his house, so I hope everything's okay. And it's like, well, I guess you know what I mean. Like that sounds legit.
Yeah, I think what sealed it for me, I was kind of doing the same thing after he called, and I was looking around and I saw the TMZ article, and that's when I'm like, okay, because a lot of they've been really good there for a long time of not putting anything out that was not true after they got sued years ago. So that's what set it down for me, and they normally break that kind of stuff. Meaty, what'd you think when you heard the news of Hulk Hogan gone?
Well, I was like you. I was here working at home, and I get these pop-ups sometimes with different information or current events, weather, whatever. And it just so happens it came up, and then about probably wasn't 30 seconds later when you texted me. And so then, I looked up TMZ's website, and I worked down here in my man cave, and I flipped it over on Fox, and Fox already had it. Fox News already had on there TMZ reports, Hulk Hogan is past at 71. And, I kind of felt if you guys remember, it was Booker T, and I can't remember who the other guy was in the podcast when Bray Wyatt died, and they got the information live while they were doing the podcast, and they were all just like eyes were big as Coke bottles, and they were getting the information streamed, and I kind of felt the same way. It was like, you know, like Paul was saying, well, this can't be true. Everybody's talking about Seth Rollins' injury, fake or work or whatever. This is, and then it just, it just started trickling down, like you said, everywhere. And it was like, because it was odd about, hey, we're talking about how he'd been ill from his surgery, but you didn't see him. There were rumors he couldn't move and whatever. I had heard a rumor or saw a report where he had a tube down his throat or something like that. But no, I mean, it was just, it was just shocking. Just totally shocking, like you said in the beginning, to have two Hall of Famers, Ozzy Osbourne and Hulk Hogan, back to back.
Yeah, I guess the place for me to start is I'll just start with my earliest memories of Hulk Hogan. I guess I was never a big fan of the red and yellow. I was more the heel guy, and I was kind of one. I've told the story before, but I met Roddy Piper in '81 when he was the biggest asshole on TV, and he was great. Spent a lot of time with me as an 8-year-old child, and I just fell in love with Roddy Piper, and I never let it go. So of course, that was the big first feud that kicked off WrestleMania. But I'd seen Hogan before, and I don't remember what I saw it on, but I saw the match with him and Andre the Giant from Shea Stadium, and then they were advertising, and nobody ever slammed Andre. I'm like, I've seen him do it 3 times already. What are we even talking about? But I thought with Freddie Blassie as the incredible Hulk Hogan, I never saw him as Terry Boulder or anything like that, but I always thought he was a better heel. And you go through the history. I'm sure we'll cover that. There's so much to talk about with Hulk Hogan. And again, for anybody listening, the good, the bad, the whatever. But Hulk Hogan was the performer. Terry Bollea was the man. And to me, there's always a difference that you can separate the two. And be in a wrestling show that's, we'll talk about the other stuff, but I'd seen him.
The history,
I'd seen a lot of that stuff, and I was sitting there. I was a big NWA fan, and I'm watching Ric Flair and Harley Race and Greg Valentine and these different Roddy Piper have blood feuds and dog collar matches and cage matches, and then here comes Hogan with the leg drop and a foot, and I'm like, come on, man, can we at least make it look a little bit real, please? And so that was kind of my I just wasn't a big Hogan fan, but I'll tell you what, and it wasn't that I never had a red and yellow shirt, so I had to get out. I had to get out the cross, and I had to get out the NWO shirt. That's what I got. And but for Hogan to go heel and do what he did with the NWO and resurrect his career, my hat's off to him, because not a lot of people can do that. Not a lot of people can that decline and do a complete 180 and come all the way back up here, and that's what he did. Danny, when's the first time you ever remember seeing Hulk Hogan?
Oh gosh. I have to stop and think of what year it was. I was a kid and remember living in Wisconsin. We had the AWA, and I vaguely remember seeing him as Hulk Hogan in the AWA, because if you remember, he was WWF and then he went back to the AWA. So I remember the AWA Hogan, and I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Jason, but was it that the version of Hogan that appeared in Rocky 3?
The AWA version, the version of Hogan that appeared in Rocky 3 was
AWA.
Was the Freddie Blassie version. The reason he went to the AWA was Vince McMahon Sr. said, you're either an actor or you're a wrestler. If you go do this movie, you're fired.
Oh, okay. So he was in WWF then at that time.
And he was like, and Hogan was just like, man, that's Sylvester Stallone and Rocky. Yeah, kiss my ass. I'm going to do the movie.
Yeah, and I read somewhere that Sylvester Stallone handpicked him to be Thunderlips. So I don't remember. I vaguely remember watching WWF when I was a kid, and I think I was talking to the Hubs about this. The first episode that I remember of watching was Primetime, and I think it was Gorilla and Jesse, maybe. I just remember my dad's big box floor model box screen TV. Paul, you're too young to remember those. Steve, you probably do, but it's the big one that took like 10 people to move upstairs with 2 remotes. So I just remember watching WWF primetime on that one. And my earliest memory, again, is a heel version of him in AWA. That is like my first memory. It's also the reason why I watched Rocky 3 68 times in the summer of 82 when it was on cable.
What about you, Paul? What was the first memory you have of the Hulkster, brother?
Okay, so I don't know if this is a weird answer, but I don't have a first memory of the Hulkster because it's just he's always been there. And I mean, like, I found a photo of me must have been 1.5 maybe, and I'm standing watching wrestling.
So what was that like last year then that you were 2?
87 we think the photo was taken. 88. So 88 Hogan's already, you know what I mean, champion.
You were 2 in 1987?
Yeah, in 88.
Oh,
I'm in
Lord.
86, baby.
Oh, Lord.
So
So-
here I thought you were 2006. Just kidding.
No,
Anyway, go
I
ahead.
was God, I'm almost 40 now. But yeah, so that was just always there. I have a tape in my video store that's literally older than me, physically older than me. So it was printed in 85 and my dad had it, and when I was little he would put it on. And you know how kids, they only watch one thing, they'll latch on to one thing and they want it 1,000 times over. That video was that for me, and that was kept in the family because my dad always laughed, oh, you love this Hulk Hogan tape, blah blah blah. And it's not even like Hulk Hogan like what you would think. It's like Bob Backlund, the Sheik, like it's old stuff. And even I looked at it one day going, I don't remember any of this. But yeah, Hogan's just always been there. Just
Yeah, it's
in the
around here
back.
somewhere. The only VHS tape that I kept after getting rid of all, when everything went to DVD and now of course digital. But I've got the Roddy Piper VHS Coliseum home video of it's all about Roddy Piper. So yeah, I got one of those hanging around here.
It's
B,
just
what's your first memory of the Hulkster, man?
Well, kind of ironic, Miss Diva right there. And now that's why I said the 2 for in 1988. I'm gonna go ahead and give it away to everybody that doesn't already know. Jason, no comment on this. I graduated high school in '87, and AWA
I was in
3:30.
8th grade.
I know you were. Thanks for the reminder.
No problem.
3:30 ESPN
Yes.
every day AWA wrestling
Yes.
with Larry. I can't remember Larry's last name. Had the
Listen,
big
it is-
Yeah, I know you're talking about.
He married
Larry something,
Vern
yeah.
Gagne's daughter.
No, that was
And-
the disco. He's talking about Larry.
the announcer.
Oh, Larry Nelson.
Larry Nelson. There you go. Larry Nelson, the announcer. But every 3:30 on ESPN during the week, and they had, came out, and this was back, obviously, Hogan had different sizes, but this was back when Hogan was, just huge. He was head and shoulders above everybody else. But back then you had monsters in the AWA, and then you had, little guys, some of Shawn Michaels, you had Big Scott Hall, Abdul the Butcher, and some of those others. But that's what I can remember. Hulk, or the Hulk Hogan, or the Hulk, whatever they called him back then. Long blonde hair, huge and muscular. 3:30 AWA every day on ESPN starting out, and he was pretty stiff. I noticed, but I'm thinking this guy is huge. He's going to hurt somebody.
Well, it's funny. It's actually just any of you guys know how he got his name?
it was, if I remember correctly, there was a lawsuit because they took it from Marvel Comics, the Incredible Hulk.
Well,
So
before
there was a little bit of like,
well, no, actually, how he went from Terry Boulder and started incorporating the Hulk into his name. I'm going back.
oh, I'm not familiar with this
I
story.
think
no.
Vince said he looked like a Hulk and wanted him to have like an Irish last name or something.
The Irish last name.
Oh,
that
yeah.
part is correct. But before he went to the WWF and was feuding with Andre, he was in the territories. He'd been jumped around from Memphis to different places. Him and Beefcake. I forgot what Beefcake's name was, but it was
Ed Boulder.
No, yeah, but they were supposed to be brothers. But he walked in one day and met somebody for the first time, and I want to say it was Jerry Jarrett, but I could be wrong. I'd have to look it up. But somebody looked at him and said, "Holy shit, you're bigger than the real Hulk." That's when the Hulk was popular on TV. So from that day, he became Terry the Hulk Bowler, and then it kind of moved along when he went to WWF.
Right, because Lou Ferrigno was a real human being, and yeah, okay.
And then he went on, like, they dropped the Hulk. I mean, they dropped the Terry Bowler, and Vince Senior wanted him to have the Irish last name, and the rest, as they say, is history.
Mm-hmm.
It just stuck with him all along. I mean, all his gimmicks along the way came the, brother, and all the say your prayers, eat your vitamins, and all that. But
Hollywood.
Yeah, I mean, it was.
It's lucky because it's a literary, at least. Like, those are fun names to have. So Hulk Hogan is fun to say. So we can Hollywood, you know what I mean? It's okay. We can roll with this. It's easy to play off of. So,
and you brought up a good point. He was everywhere. I mean, he was literally everywhere. He was, once he got somewhat famous, part of, with Rocky and then other shows and, different stuff. I mean, talk shows, he just was everywhere. And then when the WrestleManias hit, WrestleMania 3, I think it was, with Andre, I mean, it just.
We had started with Cyndi Lauper and that score the war to settle the score on MTV. And then that kind of catapulted into WrestleMania with, that the Crockett's paid for, but it's all good. And, but yeah, I mean, he just, he took off, and everybody wants to talk about, was it him? Was it Vince? And, personally, I will say it's a combination of both. We will take, Meady and I were talking earlier, it's like the Brady Belichick comparison, but, Brady was able to move over and win one Super Bowl with Tampa, but that's all he won. They didn't do very well the following year. And they made it to the playoffs. They were one and done. And Hogan went to WCW. The red and yellow was starting to do that. And, the whole NWO thing came about. And, he was able to lead that NWO charge and put WCW for the first time ever above the WWE. But he couldn't sustain it, because Bischoff wasn't Vince. Vince Russo sure as hell wasn't Vince. They couldn't sustain it the way that he and Vince did together. But, in his defense, Vince was struggling after he left. Vince was trying to get it, over, and he got some of them over, but Vince was kind of moving to the younger, smaller guys like Brett and Shawn and stuff like that. And it took a long time for that to catch on. And that's kind of, when you get Hall and Nash coming over from red hot feuds in WWE, acting like they're coming over to cross over, and then you throw Hogan in the mix, it just legitified the whole thing. And like, Hogan, I've heard him talk about it, was when he decided to do it, he's like, who else makes sense? I'm the most WWE known guy. Who else makes sense? And he was right. And, the NWO to this day still has one of the best selling shirts on WWE Shop. I mean,
oh, I love this story. Okay, so I have to cut in because I'm currently reading one of the Nitro books, and it got to this point about Hogan turning heel. And what I love about professional wrestling is nothing is real. And this is what I mean by it. So you just made a story about, you just told the story from like Hogan's perspective where he was in charge. Like, yeah, this is good. This is apparently from Bischoff's perspective.
Oh no, they didn't know he was actually going to do it until.
Yeah, they were like last minute. No.
Bischoff talked about that. Sting was the backup plan. Bischoff said, even when he agreed to do it and he was going to come out, Bischoff's like, we didn't believe he was going to do it. We talked to him about it.
I loved hearing that because here's like one of the most historic heel turns ever.
Yeah, he was scared of what kind of ramifications his kids might face at school, and he was just dead set against it. But Bischoff said he was also talking about how he was starting to hear the boos in the crowd for the red and yellow, and they said they got him to the arena, and Bischoff's like, I still didn't think he was going to do it.
Yeah.
And when he finally walked out there, he goes, well, I'll be damned, I guess I'm actually going to do it.
What it said in the book was Bischoff specifically surrounded Hogan with yes men. Keep him in the building, keep him happy, whatever he wants. If he's hungry, if he's, you know what I mean? Like, surround him. So if he looks like he's about to leave, just block the door. It's so funny reading some of these stories where they.
What book are you reading? I'm going to write it down.
I think it's a Nitro.
It's a Nitro book. I mean, that's
comma or colon something.
There'll never be another partnership like Hogan. Hogan and McMahon were just, they were so perfect for each other, what they did. I mean, you can say what you want about the Jim Cornettes and the Heymans and everything out there, but you'll never find a better combination than Hogan and McMahon for what they did for each other. That's like Jason, I've talked about that before. You'll never you never had anything remotely close, and you'll probably never ever see anything like that again. What they did for each other, and it was just
It's
a great match.
Small tangent, but on that point, what Hulk Hogan was what without Hulk Hogan would Bobby Heenan be Bobby Heenan? Because Bobby Heenan's whole thing was he hated Hulk Hogan.
Oh God.
So you know what I mean? Talking about like relations and helping people grow and stuff like that. And it's like, would you have had Bobby the Brain Heenan without Hulk Hogan? Like even when Hulk turned heel, Bobby Heenan
was say that.
What side is he on?
Yeah, as many lines as Bobby Heenan spit out over the years, that was my favorite. Yeah,
Oh,
but whose
he
side is
hated
he on?
Hulk for over 2 companies over like 30 years. I hated Hulk Hogan.
I mean, you've got to have the clash with some in there. I mean, like Heenan was he was classy. The way he did everything was funny. Everything was like, I mean, it's not to the extent of say like a Jim Cornette and Vince Russo type of thing, but you've got to have, you just can't have all the baby faces all lined up in there. You got to have some clash. You got to have some conflict. You got to have some drama.
Well, if you notice though, if you go back in the annals of history talking about Bobby, Bobby went to WCW first as the commentator to try to, they gave him a good amount of money to come over and legitimize WCW, and that's about when Hogan's WWF run kind of started going down. Was after Bobby left, because Bobby was always the one that brought in the next gigantic heel to be the one to fall to Hulk Hogan. I mean, it was rinse and repeat. Big guy come in with Bobby, attack Hogan from behind, beat him up, leave him laying. Title match to pay-per-view or Saturday night's main event. Hogan gets the 1, 2, 3. We move on to the next one.
And
the one story I remember about Hogan, and this was actually hilarious because if it was me and I'm looking at Andre, I'd be like, "Are you kidding me?" Is Andre knew he was fading, and Andre and Hulk had the match, and Andre looked at slam me. Andre like slam me, and Hogan's like what? And that was when Hogan picked him up. Andre didn't give him a lot of help in getting him up. He tried to, but that story that Hogan used to say about him in the Andre match when Andre told him to pick him up and slam him was classic.
Well, yeah, he said that was the only match in his career that he went out to the ring and didn't know what the finish was going to be. Because, him and Vince kept trying to talk to Andre all day, and Andre's like, "It's okay, boss. We'll do it." He goes, I didn't know what he was going to do. He goes, he said he didn't know what he was going to do 100% until
they got in the ring and they started a conversation in the ring. Right. That was it.
Until he yelled, "Slam!" And, so I don't know, man. That's just, I mean, God, WrestleMania 1 through 8. 8 was when he took on Sid. 9, can't remember 9.
9 was when Brett was like, "You go do it."
Oh yeah,
bud.
that was his last hurrah because he beat Yokozuna for the title, then got squashed at I think SummerSlam when Yokozuna squashed him.
Yeah.
That's when he had the big black eye.
Yeah, for more Savage had punched him that he never would.
I love 9. It's so good.
But then that was he thought he was pretty well done. I mean, he said it, I've heard interviews where he said when that was done and Vince was like, I'm done with you. He said he told Vince he would never compete with him and that he figured Vince would call him here and there for appearances, maybe a 2 or 3 month feud or something, and then he'd be back off into the sunset until that fateful question from Eric Bischoff to Ric Flair when they were all at the MGM studios. "Hey man, do you know Hulk Hogan?" "Really?" "Yes, I know Hulk. What do you want? Can you get me a meeting with him?" "I can try. I'll talk to him." So Flair went and set up the meeting, and the rest, as they say, is history.
Oh, it's all that show to blame.
Thunder in Paradise.
There it is. Thank you. It's all okay.
The Temu version of Baywatch.
It's all Baywatch's fault. That's what it is at the end of the day.
Well, have you ever watched that show? I mean, it was like watching WCW on the beach. Because the Nasty Boys were in it, Savage was in it, Sting was in it, Flair was in it.
It's like controversial opinion. I actually kind of liked it because it felt like one of those shows that'd be next to like Xena Warrior Princess, where it's like a middle of the day on a Sunday, you got nothing to do, you're flipping the channels, and halfway through, Sting's fighting Hogan in Tropical Beach. Yeah, I can watch this for 45 minutes.
it needed to be on during the day with Days of Our Lives and As the World Turns and The
Yeah.
Young and Restless.
Because the
That's what it
fighting was wrestling fighting, which is always fun, but the camp level's too high to take it seriously. There's no
I don't
stakes.
remember watching that. What year was that on? That was on 90.
93, I guess, 92,
Then
93.
early
I don't
90s,
remember
yeah.
watching it.
Because Hogan came to WCW in 94. So
I have it on
Yeah.
DVD.
Well,
They turned a bunch of
It was just 1 year, wasn't it? It was just 1 year.
Hold on, I'll tell you. Because I was actually, while y'all were talking, I was trying to find, what Eric Bischoff had said, and he actually has not tweeted anything yet because he has retweeted a lot of stuff that other people have, but he has not tweeted anything, personal. I know they were
The
close.
only thing I can think of, I'm visualizing Bash at the Beach 2000 in my head when Hogan cut that scathing promo on Russo, and Russo went off the grid and cut a real promo on Hogan.
Yeah.
I'm only wondering what's going through Vince Russo's mind at the moment.
Well, the thing with Vince Russo, and everybody thought that whole thing was a shoot, which finding out later down the road that it wasn't. I thoroughly, I really loved. But everything went according to plan until Russo went back out there and did that promo. I mean, they were set it up to where, the whole thing with Jeff Jarrett was planned, that everybody thought was a shoot. It wasn't. They were setting it up for Hogan to leave, and then after Booker T won the title, Hogan to come back in a month or so and go, "You're not the champion, brother, I am," and try and kind of elevate Booker T in a feud program with Hogan, and Hogan actually, from Vince Russo's promo, Hogan wound up winning millions in a settlement with Turner Entertainment.
Mm-hmm.
And if you haven't seen that Bash at the Beach promo, it's entertaining to say the least.
Oh, it's lively, especially when Russo comes back out and he starts. I mean, there's cussing and carrying on, the crowd screaming. It's like there was a lot of. Is this true? Is this real heat? Is this work? Is it not quite as bad as. Here we go. Can everybody see it?
No, what do you?
Remember the fingertip match?
Oh, the fingertip of doom.
Oh, the finger poke of doom. This one.
Honestly, that's still not my worst Hogan moment for me. Was to me the greatest story ever told in wrestling over my watching was the 18-month build up to Hogan and Sting. After what they did with Sting, taking him from the charismatic figure he was, putting him in the rafters, and not letting him get in the ring for 18 months, to have it end that way because Hogan didn't like that he wasn't tan or he wasn't built and he hadn't been in the gym enough. And in Hogan's defense, if you're going to be out of the ring for 18 months, you ought to come back in the best shape you've ever been in my opinion. But
Sting also wears a bodysuit, so I can totally understand Sting's perspective of like, what does it matter? You know what I mean? Like,
well, yeah, they might have put him in a bodysuit for a reason. I mean, to me, he should have come out and
I just mean like his outfit's like a singlet with the pants, right?
Yeah, but see, before he go back in that, before that he was wearing the long tights with nothing up here.
Oh, fair, yeah.
To me, that's how he should have came out with black with white scorpions on it and nothing up top, looking jacked. I mean, I would
at least come out like swole.
Yeah, I mean, if I'd have been him trying to come out there, I'd have wanted to try to at least look as big as Hogan, if not bigger. But that's not the route he took, and that whole pay-per-view to me and that whole storyline got ruined with the finish. I mean, the finish was just like, what the hell just happened? And we're coming off of Bret Hart's out there as a special guest enforcer referee. We're coming off the screw job in Montreal. That, depending on who you talk to, that Scott Hall was convinced. He said it to the day he died that Bret was in on it. And who knows? I mean, I guess they're gonna take that one in their grave too. But I mean, as far as let's go with this. What's your favorite Hulk Hogan match, Danny?
Oh, favorite Hulk Hogan match. I feel like the one with King Kong Bundy, I want to say it was in a cage and maybe Saturday night's main event.
No, I think that was WrestleMania 2.
Maybe it was 2. You're right. Maybe it was 2 because I seem to remember I was watching that episode of Saturday night's main event. But I would say probably that one because like Gorilla Monsoon used to say. What did Gorilla Monsoon used to say about King Kong Bundy? He was a condominium on legs or something, I
Yep.
think.
A walking condominium.
That was it. And just like how big Bundy was, and just like his like stature, his build, his physicality. I mean,
5 count.
to a 10-year-old, he's, you know, Hogan's like, oh my God, it's Hulk Hogan. But to the 10-year-old, Bundy was scary. I mean, he was like legit scared the crap out of me.
What about you, Paul? What's your favorite Hulk Hogan match? You got one?
Okay, so I'm really trying to think of one specific match, and I'm struggling. So I'm gonna try to specify like one era. Okay, do you guys remember Mr. America?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Zach Gallen.
He was sort of Hulk Hogan shaped, right? Like I feel like he might have been a trainee of Hulk Hogan or something.
No,
but there was a
completely
period of
different guy.
time when
Completely
Mr.
different guy.
America was on SmackDown, I think. And I just thought some of like they were basic matches. He wasn't doing anything groundbreaking. But in my teenager brain, I'm like, this is the best. This is the best stuff. Like he looks like Hogan, but he's not Hogan. And he like, I don't know. I'm gonna say I wish I could think of like one good match. I want to say the one with Shawn, but Shawn was taking the piss, so that's like.
No, that one was the bumps that Shawn was taking was just I laughed my ass off that whole match.
Yes, I was like, I wish I could pick a little bit more of a serious, but I would say like in that range, that Mr. America, what is that, 2003, 5-ish?
I have no idea, man.
It's all vague.
I know that. I know the
I
reason.
want to say 2002, maybe.
Something like that.
He was still getting paid by Turner in 2002. When I
2004, maybe.
Right after,
Yeah,
right
it might have been a little later because that would it would have been after the NWO. It would have been after that.
2005.
Yeah, but that was when he got that's when he got fired for some odd reason. They were in the middle of that gimmick, and they just fired him because the storyline was if he gets unmasked and it's Hogan, kind of like they did with Dusty and the Midnight Rider, that he was going to be fired.
I'm a sucker for storylines where someone wears a mask and they get someone else.
He did something, and they just showed like because he was going out there. If you remember, he was going out there and he'd look at the crowd and he'd raise up the mask and he'd put it back down real quick. But they
say that about the El Grande Americana and every time he pulls up the mask, it's a different person under the mask.
But it wasn't
Gable.
You know who it was on Monday?
It's been Kaiser for a few years.
You're just making up names at this point. Like he's.
Honestly, my favorite story with that gimmick was, God rest his soul, Owen Hart when he was doing the Blue Blazer when he passed. But them taking the mask off the Blue Blazer, and it was Jeff Jarrett and the Brooklyn Brawler and all kinds of different people.
When Coco Beware came out, that was the best one.
So, Meany, what was your favorite Hulk Hogan match?
Probably not from a real wrestling standpoint, but just from the build-up and just the celebrity status and everything. But you got to put this in your tops with Hogan and Mr. T against Roddy Piper and Paul Orndorff.
I think everybody in that match was trying to make sure Piper didn't kill T because they had legit heat. Piper.
I mean that was the whole great thing about it. There wasn't Mr. T was coming on. He was a big star. This was what 83, I guess it was 84, maybe
84 was WrestleMania 1 because they went the year because Starrcade 83 and then WrestleMania 1.
WrestleMania. Mr. T was big on the A Team. Hulk had been on a couple episodes of the A Team.
Oh, sorry.
And, just that build up to that match because Piper was just such a heel.
Well, before the A Team, T had done Rocky 3 with Hulk Hogan.
Yeah, exactly. But
that was his first acting gig.
That tag team match with T and then, of course, the training before the match with Hogan and T in the gym and doing this, and they're slapping each other and hitting each other. That was pretty classic. That really was.
Well, for me, and I'm a little disappointed in my neighbor up north there that he didn't mention this match.
We know how the Canadians are. Come on. Oh, sorry, Paul.
What?
And this was later in his career, but my favorite Hogan match was WrestleMania 18 with The Rock. I mean, the you know, and he wasn't the only one that told this story because you never, you know, Hogan always was looking to get himself over, and we know that. But you know, he had said that when they said they were going to do that match with The Rock in Canada, and he was healed, that he was like, man, you might not want to do that. They still pretty think a lot of me in Canada, and he was right, man. That crowd was booing Rocky out the building, and they had to switch it up on the fly, and I loved every minute of it.
I thought you were going to say the fingertip on Kevin Nash, maybe, or something. You know.
Well, you know, everybody gives him a hard time, and you know, gave him a hard time for, you know, saying he wouldn't put people over and this, that, and the other. And then you start hearing people actually that was actually back there saying, did he have creative control? Yeah. Well, that wasn't his fault. If you know, if you're stupid enough to give a wrestler creative control, that's on the promoter, not the wrestler.
Get what you deserve.
But you know that they are, you know, and even Russo has said this, but Bischoff has said it more than, you know, Russo. But Russo did back it up that, you know, Hogan had no problem laying down for anybody. But when you pitched that to him, his question was, okay, then what? And if you could not answer the then what, then he wasn't going to do it. You had to have it laid out of what if he was going to if Hulk Hogan, the name, was going to lay down for whoever, you had to have a reason for it going forward. And if you did not have that, no, he was out. That doesn't work for me, brother.
What was the match where they didn't know? Wasn't it Hogan and Sting? Where Hogan wasn't at first, it was planned, but then he said he wasn't going to lay down to Sting. And
that was
Sting
Starrcade. That was Starrcade. The end of that 8-month layoff.
Sting, I mean, even walking down the aisle, he had no idea what the result of the match was going to be.
Well, if you listen to Nick Patrick talk, if you go back in the history of that match, the way Bret Hart was supposed to get involved, it was supposed to be a quick 3 count, you know, and then Bret come in and say, no, that's not happening. But, you know, when Hogan dropped the leg, Nick Patrick, it was just a regular 3 count. And I was like, what the hell just happened? And Nick Patrick, he was funny. I forgot which podcast he was on. They're like, so who told you not to do the quick 3 count? He was like, the boss. He's like, so was that Hogan or Bischoff? And he just grinned. I saw the video of it. He's like, I said the boss. And because Bischoff has said several times, you know, the last time he talked to Patrick, it was supposed to be a quick 3 count. So, yeah. Again, I mean, people are going to have their opinions, but the one thing that you can say, and like I said, I was not a Hulk Hogan fan when I was a kid at all. I was, you know, Piper, Flair. You know, Hogan actually did an interview. I don't know when it was, but it was after he quit wrestling, of course. And you know, the whole Flair comparison got brought up, and he's like, he goes, Rick can wrestle circles around me. He's, you know, yeah, Rick's much better than I am. And the guy started laughing. He's like, that's the first time I've ever heard you admit that. He's like, brother, I ain't gonna admit somebody's better than me when I'm on top of the world, and you know, I'm still trying to draw money. He goes, but I'm retired. He goes, you know, we can shoot now. He goes, but anybody that goes out there when they're still on TV and holding the title saying somebody else is better than they are, they're just doomed from the get go. He goes, you know, when I was on top of the world, hell no, I wasn't gonna say it. He goes, but I love Rick. He goes, I think Rick's the greatest of all time. And I was like, holy shit, did that just really come out of his mouth? But you know,
well, I mean, Rick's done more 45, 60-minute matches than Hogan's done matches total. I mean, like you said, Rick can sit there and carry, you know, just about anybody through a 45-minute or an Iron Man match or 60-minute match or whatever you want to have. And Hogan's never done that.
Rick's a wrestler. He can go anywhere in the world. He can wrestle anyone if they speak the same language or not. We can go 45 just because we speak wrestling. Hulk Hogan was the showman, the entertainer. He would be like, hold on, I have to do my spot and give me 45 seconds. And then, okay, now we can wrestle again.
Well, that was always the Vince thing, you know, at the end of the shows, Hogan must pose. That was Vince's line for, you know, when they were going to the finishes of his matches on the big shows back in the 80s, it was like Hogan must pose.
Well, and that's the one big thing too with Hogan, and you can give it to Hogan, you can give it to Flair. I mean, you've got, you know, so you've got your, you know, your Lakers, Celtics, you know, you've got these big rivalries, you know, Green Bay, Chicago, Washington, Dallas, New York Yankees, Boston Red Sox. But you think about it, for 30 years, through the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, probably even into some of the 2000s, so almost 40 years, there were 2 names. You know, even Rock and Cena, you can say what you want about Rock and Cena, but for 30 to 40 years, Hogan and Flair.
Yeah.
That was it. I mean,
Well,
there was nothing
I
else.
don't know. I don't know if
Well,
y'all
even to follow your analogy, you could put people like Terry Funk, who are massive, like in that range with John Cena and The Rock because of how big they got, but they were still never Flair. There was still never trying to think like Bruiser Brody. He was, he never got that level. It's only like what is it though? Like 0.5% of people hit that S class level of wrestling.
Well, you had the percentage of some that had. I mean, I think, and it's a shame that you didn't get a chance to see, but obviously Magnum TA was going to be groomed to take Flair's. He was going to be the next Flair. And then, of course, the terrible accident happened. And then Sting came along, the franchise, the icon, the friend. So Sting came along as that. But with Hogan, you had a bunch. I mean, obviously, the Undertaker. I mean, he's the Undertaker. That's one of the very few that stands out by himself. Same with Shawn Michaels. Shawn Michaels is another one that could pretty much carry anybody for any amount of time. Jason and I have talked about this before. In my opinion, just my opinion as a wrestling fan, Michaels is my number one because he can carry anybody. He knows how to wrestle, like you said, Paul, about an actual wrestler, and he is phenomenal on the mic. You say what you want about Cena, say what you want about The Rock, Stone Cold. If he'd had a longer career, because his career was shortened, he's only in for 7 years. So you don't know if he could have done 15, 20 years like some of the others.
Just his knees. If his knees were
Is that-
good.
yeah, just on a side note, how hard is that to believe? I mean, from the time he started in world class, went to WCW, went to WWE. Well, he had that little 2-month stint in ECW while he was rehabbing, and then went to WWE, was all in about a 7.5, 8 year span. I mean, that's just unbelievable.
Oh, for Stone Cold?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I mean, he was just that. That's why it's just a shame that he got, his knees gave out on him. If he'd have had a 20, 25 career like Cena did, or being around as long as The Rock and some of these other guys that have been around a long time, the Chris Jerichos and stuff, Stone Cold might have gotten into that realm of a Flair Hogan. Don't know. We'll never know. But you just don't have, and you're really not going to have anybody. There's nobody. I can't think of anybody in AEW, in TNA, in WWE. I can't think of anybody that would ever get, you say what you want about Cody. He's not there. He's not even remotely close. Rock and Cena or something.
It's like the only two people I could think of that could be put with Hogan and Flair are both dead. But the only two people I can think of, honestly, are El Santo, for the reasons of like, okay, he's back in the 50s, but they had like 20, 30 movies for El Santo, and Antonio Inoki. It's like, those are the only two people.
Yeah, if
Really?
anybody hadn't seen any, you bring up Inoki. I mean, like I said, Hogan didn't go over there and have a Flair Steamboat type match, but you would see a lot more of what he was actually capable of in Japan than you ever saw here. So,
if we want to, just a quick reference, Hulk Hogan is actually the first winner of the G1 Climax. Technically, back then it wasn't the same thing, but people go, it's called the same thing. It's the same thing, whatever. So the tournament that's currently running, which I think is on his 35th iteration, 35th year, the first one ever, held by Hulk Hogan. I think beating Inoki. And that's when they had a belt for winning the tournament back then.
I mean, the Hogan matches, obviously they were, the Pipers and everybody along the way. I still personally, and this leg drop is what's caused a lot of his issues. That's why he's got 24 surgeries with that stupid leg drop with 300 pounds in him and his butt hitting the daggone ground. Jason said something the other day about Stone Cold and doing his stunner. You try to do a stunner and land on that mat 3-4 times a day, see what the hell happens to you.
Yeah.
Hogan's dropping on his butt with that leg, which is about as lame as Cena's AA closing.
Cena is lame, but we didn't talk about
we'll finish the maneuver. But, with Flair, when you got a Flair Dusty match, you got a match. When you got a Flair Steamboat match,
you had a match.
That was main event. I mean, that was top shelf. That was top.
Yeah,
shelf.
but it's common knowledge that the best match by far on the WrestleMania 3 card was Savage Steamboat wrestling match, but they were there for Hogan Andre. All those asses in the seats were there for Hogan Andre.
You know what's funny? Sorry to cut you off. If you look back, that match was well received, but not that well received. So it's like that match is good. That match was what? What would you say? It's like 20 years too soon. If that match happened 20 years later, they would have burned the whole house down. But because it was so early,
even with the finish, even with the roll up,
it reminded me of remember the Will Ferrell move where they learn the alley oop, and the ref blows the whistle, and he's like, "Foul, 2 fouls." They're so confused. It's so amazing. They're baffled by.
But
that's what that match was for wrestling.
As much as I loved the NWA and hell, even the AWA had with Bockwinkel and Stevens and Snookum before he went, with those type of Terry Funk type matches, Dory Funk, the Briscoes, and that's Jack and Jerry for anybody listening. I'm not talking about Mark or Jay at this moment in time. But for people that did not watch wrestling, they didn't know who Ric Flair was. They didn't know who Ricky Steamboat was. But if you said something to a non-wrestling fan about, hey, do you watch wrestling? No, but that's a thing Hulk Hogan does, right? Everybody knew who Hulk Hogan was, and they still do. I mean, it's like,
I literally get that when I'm explaining to people, hey, I'm training for professional wrestling, and they're like, they look at me and they pause and they go,
no, Hulk Hogan,
what you gonna do, bro? And it's like, no, don't.
As much as I loved watching Bret Hart wrestle, and this is not a knock on him, it's just the God's honest truth, in my opinion. Bret was, he was head and shoulders above just about everybody as far as his technical ability went. He had the charisma of a Rock, and I don't mean the Rock, I mean a Rock. And if he would have had even this much of the charisma that Shawn Michaels had, it would have been, in my opinion, it would have been a much better feud. Because there was every once in a while, Bret would get a zinger in. But most of the time, Michael's just, some of the shit that would come out of his mouth, Bret, you could see the look on Bret's face, like,
having some sunny
and that's why Michael's,
Bret.
in my opinion, is head and shoulders number one, because he's got the skills that Bret Hart has, but he's also got the mic skills, can carry anybody, any size for any amount of time. Bret Hart is fantastic, but his mic skills, I mean, it's like talking to a pizza box.
And Bret's another one. We were talking earlier about who I think could have went in any era, and Bret's on that list. Bret could have made it in any era. As you saw back in the late '80s, early '90s when he was still making it. But here's a point that a lot of people don't know. It was supposed to be Flair Hogan for the title at WrestleMania 8 after Flair won the title of the Royal Rumble. And they had them on the house show loop, and the matches just weren't that great, and they weren't being well received by the audience. And if you go back and you watch their matches, because a lot of wrestling fans are like, oh my God, you had Ric Flair and Hulk Hogan at the same time, and you never put them on pay-per-view. But if you watch their WCW pay-per-view matches, they can be bust buddies out of the ring all they want to be. They did not have good chemistry in the ring. They were like oil and water. And so I mean, people can shit on Vince all they want, but he had the foresight. That was WrestleMania. So he switched it up, and, Flair Savage had a good match. They could sit there and probably wrestle each other with their eyes closed. And then you gave, Hogan Sid, and that's just two big behemoths beating each other up. So,
well, McMahon had to do it from a showmanship. It's kind of like with TKO nowadays. TKO is all about celebrities. They want celebrities. That's why they got Jelly Roll coming up with SummerSlam and everything. But McMahon was all about showmanship. Liberace, Muhammad Ali, all these other big names of WrestleMania. You look at WCW, NWA, AWA with the Flair Steamboat. I mean, I tell you what, some of the best matches I can remember were Flair and Kerry Von Erich with the Von Erich. Some of those matches.
I'm of the opinion of Shawn Michaels. I was expecting Kerry to win that match, but the fact that he beat him with a backslide, just like really. Okay.
Yeah.
Danny, so talk about the entertainment. What was your favorite Hulk Hogan movie?
So I wanted to just kind of circle back real quickly to a thought that I had as we were talking. And, with Flair with that accident, he obviously had to change his wrestling style. Well, imagine if Flair didn't change his style and become Nate. What would have happened to that character? Would he have been the second biggest name in the business? Because I'm sitting there, I'm just, remembering myself, growing up in Green Bay, and 5:05 on Saturday nights watching TBS wrestling. In fact, we were watching an episode of not World Class Championship Wrestling, but World Championship Wrestling with David Crockett and a very young Tony Schiavone, where it was filmed in the studio. And I was like, oh my God, just watch this. And these were like 30-second matches. And then you had the promos. Well, then you've got the big Flair promo, the one where, the Buddy Landell and the Gators, that one. You've got a bunch of different Flair promos. Would he be the second, probably one of the best wrestlers and one of the best talkers? So you have to kind of think about that. But you're right in the aspect that Flair and Hogan were a clash because Flair was the wrestler. Flair had you believing that's who he was in real life. And I said too that like a wrestler's personality that we see, I still feel like is a part of their personality, who they are in real life.
Oh yeah,
Where,
the ones that got over, they just
like
turned
different.
10.
And I'm sitting there, watching these matches, and I'm like, yeah, I kind of see that. But as for Hogan, he was more the entertainer. He was the actor. Flair was the wrestler. Favorite Hulk Hogan movie? I don't even think I have one, to be honest with you. We're watching Primetime, and they're talking about the premiere of No Holds Barred, so we're in that part of it. But I don't even think I have a favorite Hogan movie.
What about you, Paul? What was your favorite?
Oh my God, Mackenzie Island. I had an answer ready. I've seen too many Hulk Hogan movies. Look, put it this way. I'm bad at fantasy wrestling, so I lose, and I'm forced to watch these movies. And I've watched 7 to 10 Hulk Hogan movies, and they're all camp and they're all bad. But Mackenzie's Island in 1998, it was after Santa with Muscles. It was after the Thunder in Paradise. But they made an honest to God children's movie with Hulk Hogan, and he has like a talking parrot, and it's the same trappings as like Baywatch, but they just said, let's make this for 5-year-olds. And I'm sitting here watching it going, this is actually an okay movie. There's no baloney, like a lot of Hulk Hogan movies, you feel like there's something not translating. Like Santa with Muscles has the most convoluted stories to get him into the Santa outfit. But Mackenzie Island was just like, hey, this is a movie for 5-year-olds. We're going to have fart jokes. We're going to have talking animals. And I was like, you know what? I can actually enjoy this movie.
What about you, Meaty? What was your favorite Hulk Hogan movie?
I don't think there was really anything that was a favorite. Some of them were, funnier than others. I thought Nanny.
Mr. Nanny.
Oh, that was a cute one, and I'm a nanny. Yeah, that was a cute one.
Mr. Nanny, that was pretty, because anything, Paul just said it and WWE is perfect for changing their name from the Federation to Entertainment, because that's exactly what Hogan did for them, was straight up entertainment. He was an entertainer, whereas, World Class Championship Wrestling, whether it was WCCW or WCW or any of those others, you had the true, going back to like you were talking about, Tommy Rich and those guys back in the day, the Funks and everything and stuff. But, Hogan was a true entertainer. And I don't mean this in any negative term or whatever, but I really never considered him a wrestler, just because he did so much other things as entertainment, kind of like Cena. Cena's a great guy, but Cena, in my personal opinion, I don't think Cena's a great wrestler.
Oh, he never has been.
I sort of think this way of The Miz, but I swear The Miz has been in wrestling my entire life.
Yeah, so it's hard to believe
it could just be perspective, but yeah.
He's 20 years in.
I feel like the Miz is sort of the same, where it's like he was always the real world. He did a couple Marine movies. Like he's
it's just that
very good.
Some of these people do so much more stuff. I mean, Cena's going to go down. You know, God forbid, no, it's not a long time, but Cena's going to go down as doing what he did for that the kids thing,
the Make-A-Wish.
Make-A-Wish. Thank you. Cena's going to go down as being the only man in the history of wrestling to do more for them than other wrestlers combined.
Oh, he's done more than anybody. He's granted the most wishes.
Okay, I'm totally willing to be wrong on this, but isn't Mick Foley sort of close?
I don't think so.
Like I could totally be wrong, but I think Mick Foley is sort of up there. But John Cena might just be towering Foley.
Mick Foley's a little different from being the type of wrestler because you're talking about going when you
Foley's
look at guys,
older. Like John Cena is loved by little children right now.
When you look at what Mick Foley did over the years and some of those other matches, especially the ECW matches with Terry Funk and the barbed wire and the fires and the light bulbs and all that other stuff.
Yeah, it's not the same.
That's not wrestling. That's just, I mean, it's called that, but that's just crazy stuff.
But I know Foley is famous for doing the Make-A-Wish stuff, so I just thought I'd put the name in to go. I don't know like how far he is away from Foley because I know he did a lot.
Well, Foley will be known more.
You want to hear how far? You want to hear how far the number 2 is from Cena?
Oh, this is going to be good. Yeah. Let's hear
John Cena has granted the most wishes for Make-A-Wish with over 600 wishes fulfilled. The second, behind Cena, has granted over 250 wishes. Can you guess who that might be? And it's not a wrestler.
Okay.
Not a wrestler.
Not a wrestler?
Oh.
Not a wrestler. So,
actor.
I'm gonna okay, this is sort of I'm not confident.
Oh god.
Guy or girl?
Star-Lord.
It's a guy. Saquon Barkley.
No.
The guy from Parks and Rec, Andy.
No. All right, here you go. It's a singer.
Carrie Underwood?
No, it's male. It's a male singer.
Adam Lambert.
Justin Timberlake?
You were close. It's Justin Bieber. Justin Bieber.
Yeah, I could see that because he's young, and I've heard there's a couple things in his past where he might like some troubled kids.
But and what we talk about Hulk Hogan. Well, I don't want to spend a lot of time on this, but it has to be mentioned. The real life stuff he had after the Bubba the Love Sponge stuff come out with the profanity and the vulgar, racial slurs and stuff that was in that tape. We're
getting heavy fast. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, we're coming up on the hour, man. We got to cover it, bro. It kind of shocked everybody. You had the people. It was a 50-50 thing. Some people were like, "Look, I told you he was a piece of shit." The other one was going, "Man, it's just his age group. They said that word freely when he was growing up, and he was drunk and blah blah blah." That would defend him. And first off, there's no defense for it. And second off, somebody in his position, should have known better. But also, this is not defending him for anybody listening by any stretch of the imagination. But he thought he was in a safe zone. He was at a friend's house and being recorded, not only having sex with his wife, but getting brought up conversations about things going on with his daughter and stuff of that nature. And so his privacy was invaded, and they took him out of the Hall of Fame for a while. I mean, they washed their hands of him for a long time.
He wasn't totally Chris Benoit, but he was sort of.
He was close.
He wasn't far. He wasn't far.
Yeah, let's just not talk about him. I think they took him out of. When the splash screen when Raw starts.
They took him out of all that stuff.
Yeah, there's that quick montage of all for people unfamiliar of all the old all the old wrestlers that kind of build up. Yeah, they took him out. I think they took Flair out for a while once they heard about his story. So it's like they are a publicly traded company. They too have to sort of cover their legal basis when certain things come out like this.
Yeah, and they were publicly traded when all that stuff happened because
Well, his whole family was in the spotlight. I mean, he had the divorce from Linda with the
Mm-hmm.
scandal and everything. His son Nick had that really, really bad car accident
Mm-hmm.
where he messed himself up in a car accident. Brooke Hogan was trying to get her singing career going, and she had all these other people that were in her crew or whatever you like to call it and stuff. And and of course he had Hogan Knows Best. He had the TV show.
Oh, there's a couple wild shows. He had one with Jimmy Hart where they were like, it was like Hogan Celebrity Wrestling, I think. So they got like Screech, and they got a bunch of old celebrities.
Celebrity Wrestling Deathmatch or something?
No, it was Celebrity Championship Wrestling or something like that.
So I think what they did is they got like Jimmy Hart, Hulk Hogan, couple of like the Nasty Boys, maybe Beefcake, and then they got a bunch of old aging celebrities and said, "This is how you put on a wrestling show. You guys are all performers. You'll get it." And they made them go out. They made them do bumps and they made them do moves. And I mean, like, it was fun watching Screech do a choke slam, but it wasn't really that entertaining.
Well, I will say the one sad thing with Hogan that I'm sorry that he didn't get to, because, obviously they were huge. Him and Savage were huge together. And unfortunately, Hogan didn't get to patch up that relationship. And he used to say it on interviews and podcasts. He did not get to patch up the relationship like he wanted to with the Macho Man before he passed. And, that was a shame, whether it was, the Elizabeth thing or whatever, but he didn't get to patch that up, which was, kind of a shame because, Savage and Hogan, you could say that was a good 10 years of WWF there for a while. Savage Hogan.
Yeah, we're talking about the Make-A-Wish thing, and Cena first, Beaver second, but then you have a kind of a handful in here together with over 200, which includes Hulk Hogan, Michael Jordan, and Dale Earnhardt Jr. So I'm not sure where Mick Foley is on that list, brother, but he's pretty far down the
Hey, I've done 0, so I can't really judge people for doing more than that number. You know what I mean?
I cannot believe for 1 second the greatest professional wrestler in Canadian history has not done one Make-A-Wish.
I'm trying, brother. I'm trying. It's hard.
We know, Paul, and we know Ethan Page is busy. We know.
They keep kicking me out of the hospital. That's the worst.
So are we saying that Lance Storm is ranked higher than he is? Is that what it is?
No, Lance Storm's like way down on the totem pole, man. Paul had moved up the ranks, man.
You guys are someone's gonna see this, and I'm gonna get blacklisted from every company. This guy's out there trying to get over. We can't have that.
I'm the announcer. I'm trying to get you over. That's my job.
No, I know. I appreciate
You're not trying. That's my job. But we're talking about movies. I was sitting there looking at the list of movies, and I'm like, damn, he did some of these. If you've never seen No Holds Barred, it's kind of WWE in a movie format. That's really all it is.
80s just to be like.
Yeah, 80s WWE. Let's clarify.
Well, that's what got David Arquette in the End of the Ring, wasn't it? That was the movie that got him interested.
No, that was Ready to Rumble in the 90s.
Oh, Ready to Rumble. That's right.
But yeah, I mean, Hulk Hogan basically in No Holds Barred plays himself, just under a different name.
Rip.
Rip him.
Yeah. And he just
and that's when Tiny Lister played Zeus. Anybody not familiar? He was in Friday.
Oh, he was great.
He was Debo in
Debo.
Friday. They brought him in after the No Holds Barred movie, and just another big guy to beat Hogan up, leave him lay in challenge for the title, and then he lays down 1, 2, 3.
He was the first coming of Omos.
He wasn't as big as Omos. That's a big boy. So,
yeah, he is a big boy.
But yeah, I mean, like I said, there's been some controversy, and then the last time Hogan was seen on a wrestling show was right after the Republican National Convention, and he was they brought him out in California, which was not the smartest thing in the world. Right after he's I don't care about your politics. We're talking semantics here, but he's really pushing for Donald Trump, and he goes out and does his gimmick on with Kid Rock on the Republican National Convention stage, and then 2 weeks later you bring him out in California. It's like, what the hell did you think was going to happen? I mean, so And that was unfortunately that was the last time we saw him on TV. But
And okay, to be fair, outside of of specific politics, I find certain wrestling crowds don't like when you're just coming out to hawk a product, or if you're just, you know what I mean, like buy my thing, you know what I mean, like not a lot of crowds can dig that. So they saw him, they're like, already we're not a fan, and then he started the whole like buy my beer, and they're like,
well, they better get used to
I
it
don't like this.
as far as that stuff goes, because you see what they're doing now with since TKO took over, doing something Vince would never, not Vince wouldn't even do, and that's put logos, advertisements on the actual ring canvas.
Mhm.
For as much crap that people give Vince and say about Vince, he always said the canvas was sacred. He wouldn't put nothing on it, and he never did. But TKO is putting all those advertisements on the canvas now, and so.
Like Logan Paul puts all of his drinks out there right by the announce table. He's got that rack of drinks, the tables.
Anybody ever had Prime?
Slim Jim?
Okay, so this
Slim Jim
is
right on
where
the
I
face.
I'll draw a weird line. So big fan of New Japan Pro Wrestling, and they have logos on the mats. It looks very boxing. So they have the corner pads with the logos, and they have logos on the mats. And to me, it looks, it looks official because there's a company logos, but the Slim Jim logos on the table, too far.
That's ridiculous.
That's too far. Don't
That's
put
ridiculous.
logos on tables.
First time I saw that, I was like, what in the hell is this? And then I couldn't quite tell. And then when they turn it around, get ready to open it, I can see Slim Jim on each end of it. I'm like, are you serious?
You know
right
what
now?
I think it is?
And it really takes away too, like the logo, it just takes away from the actual ring. I mean, I remember going to house shows and live tapings of Raw and SmackDown. And this was like 10 years ago, you didn't have any sponsorship. You didn't have anything. And we were even talking about going, speaking of SmackDown, they're coming September 5th to Chicago. We were thinking about going, but I'm not going to pay $200 for a ticket.
I think
That's why they're having difficulty selling out some of these things.
Yeah.
They're going to 2 nights now with SummerSlam, of course, WrestleMania. I went to 40 in Philly, and that was outstanding. But that was the first WrestleMania without Vince, and that WrestleMania was just stellar. Then last year's in Vegas, 41, they couldn't keep up with 40, and Lord only knows what they're going to do this year right back in Vegas. But they really have got to up some of the storylines, to be able to keep up with these multi-night events, because eventually Survivor Series might be 2 nights. Hell, the Royal Rumble might be 2 nights. You never know.
Well, if I was going to do another one for 2 nights, it would have been the Rumble first, not SummerSlam. But
Yeah.
I like
just
that
my
because then the
opinion.
men get one and the women get one, and it kind of
Exactly.
spreads it out through the night. I will say, going back to how the 2-night thing started was in Japan with the storyline where they had to have the number 1 contenders match before the title match, and it just built up in a way. It felt sort of natural as they were doing it, where they said, how about this? We'll have 2 nights, and then the number 1 contenders match will be the main event for the first night, and then the championship match will be the main event for the second night. And then that way you can build, you know what I mean? You still have that story going through it, and that was the whole reason. The next year they said, no, we don't have a good reason for that. 1 day, done. And that was like 6 years ago. So part of me is like, why is WWE still doing this when the people who innovated the idea have backed off of it years ago?
Yeah, well, we'll dive into this more next week because we're kind of focusing on this. But I'll go back. First off, I've said a million times, unless I just had money to blow and I had good seats where I could actually see the ring, there is no way in hell I'm going to WrestleMania All In or anything else if I got to pay money to watch it on the big screen. I'm not going to. I'll sit at home and do it. But I'll go back. I want to say it was the WrestleMania where Brock Lesnar faced Roman Reigns, and Brock actually won. And everybody thought Roman was going over. Brock won, but that shit had started at like 2:00 in the afternoon, and it was like almost 1 o'clock when it went off. And so it's kind of like, you go with All In, a couple of weeks back, because we hadn't been here since. We had some issues last week, the week before. That's when my granddaughter was born. Yay me! And so we hadn't been here in a couple of weeks, and but so we hadn't got a chance to talk about all that. We'll kind of fly into that next week. But I mean, I'm ADHD as hell. I am not going to be able to sit somewhere for 6.5, 7 hours and have a good time. I'm going to be itching to get the hell out the door. And so the 2-night thing makes sense if you can do it. If you can't, then it's a double-edged sword, because if you go back, as popular as some of those WrestleManias were, there'd be 16, 17, 18 matches on the card. Now, granted, you had a lot of 2.5, 3-minute matches, just to make sure people got on the show. You have your battle royal, and then you have Demolition take on Strike Force for the tag team titles, and the damn match is over in 3.5 minutes. And so that's kind of the way they worked it in. You'd have a couple of different, couple of matches that would go 15, 20 minutes, but the rest of them, it was 3 to 5 minutes. And so there's ways to do it. I don't think that would work these days now, but
well, to sort of bring it back to the major topic at hand, it's like the original sort of string of manias were good because they had this storyline going through of Hulkamania. Is he going to beat King Kong Bundy? Is he going to beat Andre? It was always, let's focus on these major story points and let's bring it together for Mania. I feel now like this might be a weird perspective because it's coming from the outside of the WWE fan, but it's like there's sort of a blur of like there's all these different things going on. There's all these different storylines going on. There's all these different celebrities. But if you go back and watch like Mania 2, Mania 3, it's like, no. Jake the Snake, Alice Cooper, go. Like Cyndi Lauper, who was the girl she was with?
Wendy Richter.
Go.
That's the one Tony Storm talks about all the time.
But it's like there's because Mania is 2 days and they have this roster bloat. It's like too much. It's a blur of what's going on. Focus it down. Stick to a storyline. You can have 7 matches if they're fun, but focus on the main event. What's going on? Title match, push it.
Well, here's a question from your years past. How many WrestleManias in a row, or how many WrestleManias total, was Hogan either in the main event or he was the main character talked about for that pay-per-view?
The first 8.
Even 9, he was sort of a star of it because he got the
title at the end, but he was in that tag match. It was him and Beefcake against Money Incorporated,
and then he came back at the end.
For almost 10 years, Hogan was the core of all the WrestleManias. And you can't say that about a Roman Reigns or some of the others.
Yeah, see that to me, and I then we're coming up on the hour. Actually, we ran over the hour, so I'll say this, and we'll go back around one more time. And I've said it before. They are so star powered right now. They have so many. They have done a good job of bringing people back or elevating people. That if Seth Rollins is legitimately hurt, their pay-per-views will be fine without Seth Rollins. CM Punk goes out, they're fine without CM Punk. Drew McIntyre, Roman Reigns taking 6 months off the time. They have so many people there right now that their shows are fine if they can still, as long as they're done correctly. They have enough star power by name. If they're formatted correctly, they'll be fine. It's not, they're not in a world of hurt if somebody is not on the show like they would have been in those WrestleManias 1 through 8, just like with Starcades if Flair hadn't been on. With Hogan not being at WrestleMania. And this is Hulk Hogan, so we could legitimately talk all night. So, Danny, we'll wrap it up, and I'll tell you real quick. I told you I might have a surprise for you. Adam's comment, and I tried to get Adam to come on tonight. He said he was going to try, but he was not able to make it. So that was my possible surprise for you. Was Adam? Adam came on. So, Danny, we'll start with you. What's your final thoughts on Hulk Hogan and his legacy?
I posted this on Twitter today, and I posted a picture of him. Don't tell my boss. Shh. But anyway, so in 1983, you had this guy who, was in Rocky 3. He did really good. He played Thunder Lips. He, you know, you could just see that there was something special about him. And correct me if I'm wrong, but it was 1984 when everything changed, when he beat the Iron Sheik. And wrestling, as you know, it changed forever. And even my sisters who don't watch wrestling, people, I was actually running a work errand today, and one of my former coworkers came up to me and she goes, "Did you hear the news about Hulk Hogan?" They all knew I was a big wrestling fan. I mean, this has just made, you know, people like, wow, Hogan's gone. Wrestling is not going to be the same again. I can't even watch, you know, any of the old like WWE stuff knowing, okay, he's gone. He's not going to be back. It's like a dark, it's almost kind of like a dark day. Love him or hate him, it's a dark day in wrestling history.
Absolutely. Paul, what about you? What's your final thoughts on the?
It's
on
like,
the
oh man, I almost want to get like philosophical and deep, but it's like, look, we all know the highs of Hulk Hogan's career, and we can all say these glorious things about him, and he was so fantastic. But at the end of the day, the legacy you leave behind at the end of the day is going to be more important than what you've ever done in the ring. So this is the ultimate reminder of like, hey, we're not all perfect, but let's try to be a little bit better and try to learn from some of the lessons. I know I'm getting like sort of weird, but it's like, look, he's the definition of don't meet your heroes. That's the God honest truth. So how about we try to be the Hulk Hogan we think Hulk Hogan was when we were little kids? Does that make any sense? Because when I hear his theme song, like "Fight for the Rights of Every Man" and all that, like I still get a little bit fired up. You know what I mean? Like if we can find that little part of that like 6-year-old in our brain that like looked up to Hulk Hogan and go, okay, let's we can keep that image of it. But unfortunately, it's like he ruined his legacy by the end of it. I might have gotten a little bit long-winded in saying that, but it's like, yeah, he's the ultimate don't meet your hero. I know I said that weird. I apologize, but yeah. Ultimately ruined his legacy by saying things that should not have been said, you know?
Mm-hmm. And doing things that shouldn't have been done.
And
So
Steve,
hopefully we can learn from that and move on and try to make wrestling better, you know?
and Steve is the elder statesman. What's your final take on the?
That is me, the old man in the old man in the shoe or whatever. I mean, the way I look at it from the standpoint, there wouldn't be a WWE without the WWF, and that's what Hogan did. You know, you didn't have, like we talked about with Flair, you didn't have all the other big name players across the board. You know, your Piper was somewhat, Orndorff was nothing, Don Morocco was nothing, Jimmy Superfly Snuka nothing. You didn't have the power players that you had. It was Hogan, and Hogan carried that WWF forever. You wouldn't have the Triple H's and you wouldn't have the Rocks and stuff. You know, you might not even have a WWE. WWF, if they didn't have Hogan, may not have even survived. You don't ever know. But Hogan made that. That's why him and Vince were such a. Vince had the money, Hogan had the persona to run with it. And, you know, for somebody to be able to do that for basically a 10-year span, that's why I brought up the WrestleMania, you know, for almost 10 years, he was the main event, you know. So for him to do that, you know, is just, you probably won't see that again, to be able to carry a company like that. They talk about other people, you know, Sting, the icon, the franchise, this, that, and the other, but nothing like what Hogan did for that period of time, you know. And the other in comparison with Flair, because, you know, I hope we don't have to talk about that, but Jason, I made mention, still can't believe he's still alive. But the two moves, Hogan getting the crowd going and not selling the punches, and he's doing this, and he's standing up, and he's bringing it, and the crowd's going ape shit when he's doing that. or Flair flipping over the top rope and doing the stuff. I mean, there's just certain things that will always stand out that these guys do that's what brings the pop. And that's what basically people want. TKO wants the pop. WWE and Vince and all them wanted the pop. They wanted the pop, and that's what they got from these guys.
Yeah, I'll just finish it up with this. Eric Bischoff did comment. It took me a minute to find it. He even put it on his Twitter. He said that Hulk's death hasn't really sunk in yet. He reflected on the man versus the iconic character. Hulk Hogan, the character, of course, was the icon that was out there for the wrestling fans, as everybody know. And Terry Bollea, who he considered his best friend. And he also highlighted that they've had the spiritual journey that they've been on together, and his faith became a whole lot more important to him in these later years. And people may laugh at that and you do whatever. And, I'll be honest with you, I don't care. And if he really truly was going into that faith, then he didn't need it. Meaty's 100% right on the pop. I saw Hulk Hogan live. I'll still swear to this that I never saw anybody more over than the Rock and Roll Express, but Hogan was a close second. And live anyway. But you go back to WrestleMania 1, and you have to stop and wonder, if Hulk Hogan hadn't been there, would Vince have put all his eggs in one basket for WrestleMania 1? Because, again, I'm a big Piper fan. Everybody knows that. Orndorff was a good wrestler. Bob Orton Jr. was a great tactician. But you wouldn't have gotten Mr. T. And if Hulk Hogan, like I said, he told Vince McMahon Sr., kiss his ass, he was going to do Rocky III. If Hulk Hogan had just stayed in Hollywood and never came back, where would wrestling be? And, when he everybody, was it Vince or was it Hogan? When Hogan went back to wrestling after Rocky III, he went to the AWA. And that's where he created the red and the yellow. That was his. He created the Hulk rules. He created Hulkamania. A lot of people don't know that. A lot of people need to go back and watch the AWA when Hogan came back as a baby.
Wasn't he in blue and white originally, something like that?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, I think I remember that.
And one of his and Vern's big blow-ups was, a lot of those guys back in those days were still making, 6 to 8 week trips to Japan because they were getting paid a lot of money to come over there and do that. And Hulk came back, to the States and found out Vern had been selling his merchandise while he was gone. And he's like, yo, brother, that doesn't work for me. Where's my cut? That was his and Vern's first thing. And then Vince Jr. called him after he bought the company, wanting him to come back. And, again, Hulk Hogan the character versus Terry Bollea the man. When he came back to WWE, it was widely, everybody said that he went around, Mark Henry, Booker T, and a few of the other ones, and was making apologies for his comments. Now, were they genuine or were they just, words because he was back in the company? Nobody knows but him. And, whether you're like, I can't go back to that 6-year-old kid, Paul, because as a 6-year-old kid, I hated him. Well, I wasn't 6, but, 81, I was 8. So, by the time he came along and, making it big and maybe 3, I was 10. So I hated him. I was the Flair guy. I was the Piper guy. I was the 4 Horsemen guy, I was just like, ugh. And, at the end of the day, you don't have to like the man, the character. Without him, I don't think there would have been a WrestleMania 1. You can look at all these different companies that are out there right now. If you watch AEW, you'll see somebody not on TV for 3 or 4 or 6 months at a time sometimes, and the company keeps on trucking. WWE, Roman goes and takes his 6-month hiatus. Punk gets an injury, for his tricep. Seth Rollins, knee injury, maybe, we don't know. But you get my point. The company keeps on trucking.
Mm-hmm.
With those first 8 WrestleManias without Hulk Hogan, if they would have tried to do one, it would have flopped.
Even the 9th one, he was technically injured because he had the black eye, and they still shoved him in there.
Yep, and the tag
team. He worked safe. He was fine. Like, they took care of him. But even when he was injured and shouldn't have been in it, they still put him in it because it's Hulk Hogan.
And and again, like I said, I mean, you go back in the annals of history and find somebody else that was on the downward spiral and then was able to pivot and then be, for the second time, be the hottest thing in professional wrestling. Does that mean he was the best wrestler? No, absolutely not.
I think people forget sometimes in their wordage that when he had that match with The Rock, that wasn't his second time round. That was like his fourth.
Yeah.
Like you have the AWA, you have the WWE run, the original. He goes to WCW. He's talking about Hulk Hogan. He comes back,
and then
then has that run. That's like 4 generations, 4 decades. Like, I still think it's funny.
Some people might want to try to compare Flair's longevity, but Flair's last run in the WWE with Evolution and stuff. Flair was he was not in the. I love Ric Flair, but he wasn't the draw that Hulk Hogan was. Flair was not in the position to be able to do it on his own to go against The Rock, and the only reason that Michaels match got as big a press as it did because everybody knew it was going to be his last match, and God knows it should have been, but.
Two completely different styles. Say your prayers and eat your vitamins, and jet flying, limousine riding, kiss stealing, wheeling, dealing.
Yeah, but that version of Hogan that went up against The Rock and drew all that money was the NWO version. Trying to run over The Rock with a 18-wheeler and all that stuff on Raw. So, but if you look at it, everything Hogan did turned to gold as far as wrestling goes. And again, I don't think we probably wouldn't be here talking about it if Hogan had decided to stay in Hollywood after Rocky III. That's just, you don't have to like him. You don't. God knows I've said 400 different.
It's one of those. It's one of those what ifs up there with like Owen Hart, where it's like, what if someone said, "Hey Hogan, we got this action movie for you." Boom, 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 boom. Next thing you know, he's Sylvester Stallone's place instead of, you know what I mean? What if? Because that would have changed the whole everything.
What if Magnum TA didn't have that accident? What kind of career could Magnum TA have had?
Yeah, I think it's up there with one of those like what if scenarios on the like greater effect of professional wrestling.
Yeah, normally we're not this somber. Normally we like to have a little fun. And next week, when we come back on next week, not only will we be able to review the 6-hour All In, we'll get updated on the points. Paul and his brand new haircut there will bring back his Japanese segment. I'm not going to do it tonight, today in pro wrestling history, because today is a landmark day in pro wrestling, and it will go down in history that everybody in the wrestling world every year, you're going to be a year ago, Hulk Hogan passed away. 2 years ago, Hulk Hogan passed away. So we've got that already. And then by the time we come back, Moxley and Page are having their rematch on Wednesday night next week. So, we might have a changing of the guard yet again. I'm not sure. We might even get an MJF possible contract, cashing that in. And Meaty, you going to try to be here with us next week?
Yeah, you do it on Thursday, right?
Every Thursday at 9 p.m. Eastern.
Okay. Well, we'll also be able to take a look at tomorrow night and Monday Night Raw to see what kind of tributes they actually do for Hogan and Ozzy, because I'm sure both Hall of Famers.
Well, like I said, they spoke of Ozzy last night on NXT, and Tony's a big wrestling fan, so I can't remember if Collision's going to be live Saturday or if it's taped. But either way,
I think it's live. It's in Chicago.
And I think Hogan's a big enough person that they could talk about on AEW.
Yeah, I'm sure he will.
I feel like to ignore it would be stupid. It's too big,
especially with Tony Schiavone out there, calling Collision. Him and Tony got pretty tight there for a while too. So,
but didn't they do it? I believe they did the opposite way around, where someone on Raw gave a memorial for someone who had never been on WWE, and they let it slide because they're like, we're all in on this together.
It was Jay Briscoe. They said something about
Jay Briscoe. Yeah. So I feel like if it's part of the fans too. Culture, yeah.
It's like with AEW, AEW did give Bray Wyatt a little something because all the fans, they had the lights going. They had the little glow light and everything. So,
and a lot of those guys come up together, like the Ring of Honor guys that were there then. That was Tyler Black, who's now Seth Rollins. So it's all, you know what I mean? Kevin Owens went and wrestled those guys for years. So it's like,
I don't know. I don't know.
The community is just one big, big.
One of my favorite parts of All In, and I didn't see the whole thing, but one of my favorite parts of All In was JoJo coming out and singing with the Fireflies behind her. I thought that was absolutely amazing for them to let her do that, and then not only let her sing and make some money for she's raising those kids now by herself, but not only that, but pay tribute to Bray that way as well. So, But like I said, we do this each and every Thursday night, 9 p.m. Paul from up north, the greatest Canadian wrestler of all time.
Ethan Page. Oh, sorry.
Our resident diva, Miss Danny, and of course, brand new with us, Meaty. Thank you so much. That is for anybody asking. That is Otis's older brother. Don't get it confused.
Maybe the Caterpillar next time.
Oh,
Hey, speaking of Otis and the Caterpillar, Jason said something earlier about not paying money to go to a wrestling event like that. Jason would pay good money if he could see somebody get stuck in a turnstile trying to get through.
That is a story for a different day, sir. And I wish we had that on camera because we'd still be getting.
Good Lord, that would be classic.
But that is all for us. All Elite Zone Podcast Network, WrestleZone Unfiltered. My name is Jason. We'll see you next time. Yep. See, I